investigating human trafficking within our prison systems. Now, first of all and foremost, we have to take allegations of human trafficking seriously within our prison systems. If we cannot take the time to investigate allegations of a crime going on in our prison, then we're not doing something right. We're not protecting those that work behind the prison walls, and that's including, all prison staff and all inmates. We have to protect everyone. We do not want to be like the two FBI agents who totally ignored Olympic gymnasts who reported the Olympic doctor for complaints of molestation, sexual assaults. And then these two FBI agents, after ignoring their allegations of these women, falsified statements to try to cover up their mistakes, their ignorant mistakes. We don't need lazy investigators within the FBI, and we don't need lazy investigators within our prison systems. We need investigators who will go out, follow through with an allegation, make a fair and impartial investigation, and give us an answer of either substantiated, unsubstantiated, or unfounded. Nothing irks me more than a lazy investigator. If you don't want to do the job, please don't apply to be a prison inspector or a jail detective, okay? We don't need you if that's what you're going to do. Now, back to the topic of investigating human trafficking in prison. Where do we begin and what do we look for? Well, obviously, if a victim is willing to talk, and in many of these cases, the female victims in prison, and it happens on the male side as well. Today I'm talking about female victims, female prisons. The female victims in many cases do not want to talk. They're scared, obviously, because they're dealing with thugs and people that want to own them and rule their life and threaten their family and torture them when they get out of prison. So they're scared. But if you do have a victim willing to talk, take the victim's statement and follow all leads given. And we're going to get into some of these areas that you're going to check that can provide you with some very good information if you're not a lazy investigator. If you don't have a victim, but you have a prison staff member reporting suspicion of human trafficking going on in their prison, well, of course, you're going to get their statement. You're going to ask, what makes you suspicious? What evidence do you have? What have you seen? What do you know? Who are the inmates do you think are being trafficked? And, you're going to get all this information. And then you're going to go out, okay, and start your investigation, okay? You're going to start to connect the dots. You want to look in areas of female tattoos, okay? 99.9% of females that have already been human trafficked before they ended up in prison are branded, yes, actually branded with the old smoke brand some way or another. That happens still today. And most nowadays are tattooed, okay? Butterflies. If they're tattooed with butterflies, it could mean that they've been trafficked since they were under the age of 18, as early as little children. Butterflies. When they do ads in newspapers and Craigslist and all these places, these sick people put their ads for trafficking, they may not have the victim's picture or face, but they'll have a description and coded description and a picture of a butterfly. That's telling the pedophile or the pedophile child molester who's out there looking for these type of people that this is a person under the age of 18. There's all kinds of little signs. There's tattoos of the moon and the stars, meaning you want to really have a good time, call this number. But all it is, it doesn't say that. it has the moon and the stars, meaning you're going to have a really good night if you call this number or contact this ad. It's sickening, and they're tattooing their victims with this because they feel they own them. They own these girls, and they are their property. These thugs, these gang members, these sick human beings that are making a lot of money off of these victims. So that's one thing you're going to look at. You know, just like we document gang tattoos, we need to start documenting tattoos of possible human trafficking. You know, gang tattoos, and then we should have another list, human trafficking tattoos, so that we always have some kind of record of all the inmates, and we know what we're looking for. If I get an investigation assigned to me of an alleged human trafficking, well, of course, I'm going to look at some gang tattoos as well, because that could be a connection. But I'm also want to know who's got the tattoos that represent human trafficking. You know, it's common sense, step by step, basic investigation 101. If you're not lazy, you're going to follow through with these things I'm talking about today. Also, prior prostitution. Now, here's what a lot of people are going to say. I already know it. Oh my God, you have to investigate the whole thing. No, we have a list of names that were alleged to be involved in human trafficking. Remember, we interviewed our victim or our complainant, and we've narrowed it down to who they've told us they believe are being targeted right now for this investigation. Now, as we go along, anybody that's done investigations knows that we're investigating this nucleus from our complaint. Maybe one girl or one female inmate, or maybe 3 or 4 female inmates. We're investigating that nucleus, but we know that it could lead to a huge, huge radius, okay? And it has happened here in Florida. Inspectors ignored allegations from a certain prison. We won't get into where. And the prison employee who reported the allegations ended up talking to outside agencies. They actually made an arrest on this person's allegations. Kind of looked bad on, maybe they didn't care, but it looked bad to me that the Inspector General's office did not get in this and help find out what is going on within their own prison system. But we won't get into that. There's a documentary on that. And this prison employee who reported this is no longer with us anymore. He's in another state, in another, working in another corrections agency. But they lost a good person here, and I know that from talking to him for long hours. And I've also talked to a couple of the trafficking victims as well, and I'm not going to give their names. But I wanted to do this because I've talked to them about what's going on in the Florida prison system with human trafficking, and it reminded me of these FBI agents ignoring allegations that ended up to bite them in the rear and get them fired. I'm still wondering, is there anything criminal that can be done to these FBI agents who ignored these allegations? Their duty is to uphold their oath and protect and serve, and they failed these women, these 2 FBI agents. And I think that the inspectors failed their duties in the situation I just described. But let's get back to investigating human trafficking in prisons. Now, you want to look at their prior history. Are they a high risk for human trafficking? And that's where the prostitution comes in. Do they have any indicators in their prison record, their pre-sentence investigation that was done by probation and parole? Does it show any indicators of human trafficking? And we can use that and their connections. Now, how do we find out who they're talking to? Well, pen pals. Pen pals is huge with human trafficking, okay, in prison. Human traffickers on the outside will become pen pals with these female inmates. They will also have other female inmates that they've already worked with before in the prison, seasoned convicts, female inmates that have been in the prison system for a while. They're inside the prison recruiting for these human traffickers on the outside, okay? They're finding good targets for the outside human trafficker, and they're reporting back to that human trafficker saying, these females get out of prison in the next 6 months, the next 90 days, and this is who you need to pick up. They have no home, they have no money, they have no place to go, they have nothing. And that's what the human trafficker is looking for. So you want to try to pinpoint all females getting out of prison within, let's just say, 90 days down. Check their phone records. Is there one entity or one person that several of these female inmates are talking to on the phone? We want to look at that person. We want to see what they're doing. We want to see what they're saying. We want to listen to their phone calls. That person could be one of our trafficking recruiters or the trafficker or someone who works for the trafficker. And we want to get that on record and find out who they are. Now, we also want to follow through with pen pal, letters, all the mail, check the mail. I know that females have more mail than the male inmates do. Lots of letters to go through. But you know what? If you're not lazy, when the time comes, you'll check the mail that's in their property. But for the time being, you'll have a notice put in the mailroom that for this nucleus that we're investigating right now, from our complaint, you'll have their mail photocopied and then sent through to the inmates. Because, many prisons still have the paper mail. If it's electronic mail in the jail, because it happens in the jails as well, human trafficking. If it's happening at a prison or jail where you have electronic mail, well, you just have copies of the electronic mail sent straight to the investigator's office, and bingo, that's easy. I've got my mail electronically sent to me so that I can read it and investigate. If not, you'll just have to do the old hands-on, scan the mail, send it through, and save it for the inspector or jail detective so that they can get the mail and see what's going on in the communication from the mail. Fishing lines are always put out, for females to be human trafficked from prison. So check phone numbers that are called by several female inmates or phone numbers that are talking to several female inmates. And those numbers should be documented and saved and checked out. Because if you have just a couple of females in the same dorm talking to the same person, that could just be because another inmate is using another inmate's account. But they will also use another inmate's account to talk to the trafficker. It could be the females that are recruiting. If you can catch the females that are recruiting other females for trafficking, then you've got a step closer. Now you can put the pressure on them by showing them that you know who they're talking to on the outside. Here's my evidence. Or you find something in the pen pal mail or letters that came in. Got to get something on these folks to get them to open up and talk. It's not easy. That's why we don't want investigators like the FBI agents that are too lazy to go do the work. We don't want inspectors that are too lazy to go check it out. We don't want jail detectives that are too lazy to go check this out. It's work, folks, but that's what you were hired to do, serve and protect. And we want to get rid of these crimes that are happening in our prison system. Okay? So, check with your classification office. Maybe you've just been given some names of female inmates that are going to get out of prison in the next 6 months, the next 90 days, the next 45 days, the next 30 days. Well, in Florida, we have a system where someone has to be approved to pick up the inmate when they're released from prison. So now we need to go through and see, is there one entity or one person that has picked up several female inmates over the last year? One person picking up 8 females in the last year. Something's wrong with that, because why is this person so interested in picking up all these female inmates upon release from prison? Very simple, not that hard. Let's check this person out, this guy, this woman. Let's see what this person is doing. Now, how do we check these people out on the street? Well, we have all kinds of entities we can work with. We get a hold of our local law enforcement agencies and we work with them. I've worked with them as a prison inspector on many cases. I've worked with the postal inspectors for my mail issues. Work with your sheriff's department, who here in Polk County, when I worked in the 2 prisons in Polk County, were so helpful in many of the arrests we made working with me as a prison inspector, and in many other counties across the state of Florida. Florida Department of Law Enforcement here in Florida, who I've worked with on many cases, very helpful. They have a lot more pull on the street than you do as a prison inspector. You can go out and interview people on the street, and you have the authority to do that, but they have a lot of ways to help you as well with undercover, cool numbers, which is a phone number that can't be traced back in case we want to make phone calls and set up some kind of deal. And then you have your FBI, which I've already talked about that. But listen, folks, let's don't let those 2 bad apples from the FBI speak for the entire agency, okay? I'm sure they're embarrassed about those 2 agents that bit them in the butt. Now we're going to work with them and try to connect the dots and catch these people. Because isn't it our job to follow through and catch these people and arrest them and get them off the street? Okay? Follow up on these investigations thoroughly, folks. Let's make that arrest. Let's save lives. Let's protect lives, because you have to remember, I hear people all the time say, these women want to do it. Look at that prostitution record. They want to do this. Well, some of them may want to. That's right. But do you know how many of these young women and women in general don't want to do this? But they're forced into prostitution. They're trafficked by thugs who torture them, brand them, tattoo them like they're animals and they own them, put them out to work for them, and collect money off of human lives. Okay, so let's try to do a better job at stopping human trafficking before the women leave prison and catch these perpetrators. We have one case where a perpetrator was caught and is now serving a 20-year prison sentence. But his brother, who is still on the outside, attempted to take over the spot and get these same girls back under his reign. Luckily, a couple of these girls that I interviewed got out of it, made it safely after this guy got put in prison for 20 years, and are now living good lives and actually in supervisory positions somewhere. I told you I'm not going to tell you the names of these folks that I interviewed. It's a serious and sad thing, folks. There's programs in every state to help victims of human trafficking. Please look up your state's agencies and report human trafficking. And for you investigators who get the call, don't ignore it and act like they're just full of baloney and making up false allegations. You don't know that. Prime example, FBI, Olympic doctor. 70 more victims after the FBI agents ignored 2 women's complaints about this doctor. 70 more victims. When you ignore these allegations in a prison, how many more victims are you going to have? Please think about this. Gary York, True Prison Stories. Please subscribe. Thanks a lot for watching.